We live in a time where turning passions and hobbies into careers has never been more possible. With social media and YouTube, people are showcasing their skills and getting paid for it. Runners share their journey into the sport and build a career out of it. Baseball enthusiasts who have never played professionally create videos about hitting and throwing and end up landing sponsorships and getting paid. But what about you? Do you know what you're passionate about? And if not, how do you find it? In this series, I'm going to go through different hobbies and skills and see what it takes to master them. I'll take you through the tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts. That way you can decide if it's something that you want to try. To kick things off, I'm starting with pool. I've been playing casually for about a year now, but I would still consider myself at a basic level. My goal? To take you through my journey from being a complete beginner to winning my first tournament. When I started playing pool, my friend who I played with already had a couple year head start on me. He had an apartment complex that had a pool table so he could practice all the time. I grew up in a house where we didn't have a pool table and none of my friends did, so I just never really had interest in it. But I quickly fell in love. I mean, I was constantly losing. I literally couldn't make a shot to save my life, but I became obsessed with it. So I found out about a strategy called safetying, which is like a defensive kind of play where you just make sure they can't make a ball. Best case scenario, they would completely miss their ball and I could put the cue ball anywhere. Worst case, they at least probably wouldn't make it in if I played it right, so I had another chance to shoot. A few months after I started playing, I found a cue at Goodwill. I spent $6 on it. It was a little bit warped on the top part, but I mean, it got the job done. It helped build the consistency. Then I started to practice 4 hours a week, and I would just focus on making balls and controlling the cue ball. So some of the biggest things I picked up when I started playing, not really in any particular order. Number one, practicing my stroke. Practicing your stroke is huge. It goes back to what I was saying with getting your own cue to build the consistency. If you don't have a consistent stroke, you never know what's going wrong. You never know if I just didn't stroke right and I mishit the ball, or if my aim is off. If the power's off, you have no idea. So the first thing you need to practice is your stroke. Make sure you're hitting the cue ball in the spot you want to hit it. That's leading the cue ball into the target ball in the way you want to hit it. With that being said, you also need to practice your power. There are certain shots, like I'll show a shot here, where if I'm slightly off, and the ball goes into the rail, if I'm hitting it really soft, the ball goes off the rail and still falls in the pocket. But if I hit it really hard, it goes off the rail, hits the other rail, and then comes back out. So a huge issue people have when they're first starting to play pool is power control. I know that was my biggest issue. That was my buddies and anyone else I've ever met who's pretty new. All they do is hit the ball hard and hope it's going to go somewhere. I started playing more and more, and then one of our other friends started playing with us, and he was in the same position I was. He had never played pool growing up, and he would literally just hit the balls as hard as he could and hope something would go in, and that's a pretty common issue. So practice your power. Like I said, there's certain shots where if you hit it soft, it'll still go in if your aim's a little bit off. But if you hit it hard, it's not going to go. So it'll kind of help you build that control and know, when you should and shouldn't hit it hard. And in the beginning, honestly, if you hit it medium to soft speed most of the time, you'll be fine. You're not really focusing on the cue ball control as much. You're really focusing on just making balls into the pocket. When I first started practicing, I would just go to the pool table and play 8-ball. Over and over and over. Me and my buddies would either go to his apartment complex and play pool there, and we'd, like I said, just play 8-ball, or we would go to bars in our area and play with other random people. But either way, I wasn't really practicing the shots that I was failing at or constantly missing when I was playing games. So one thing I would do is, if let's say I was going to go play for 2 hours, I would commit a half hour of that time to doing drills. You can find a lot of great drills on YouTube, but for me, the biggest thing that helped was finding the shots that I was shit at. So whenever I would play a game, if I found like I'm constantly missing the shot over and over and over again, like right now, my issue is when the cue ball's on the rail and then the target ball's across the table, I struggle hitting those. When you have to kind of like arc up over it so you don't go into the rail or miss cue, huge problem. So what I would do is, next time I would go practice, I would set that shot up over and over and over again. Put the cue ball on the rail and make sure I'm hitting it, at least making contact with the target ball, kind of figuring out how I should be hitting the cue ball so I don't miss cue, everything like that. I would also do a good mix of the drills I would find on YouTube. There's Dr. Dave Billiards, there's FX Billiards, there's a lot of good channels out there that have really great drills that are already tried and true, that'll help you with certain cue ball control movements or the accuracy of your shots. Whatever it is you need to focus on, you can find it. There's a ton out there. But number one for me was finding the shots I was failing at in the actual games that I played. The next biggest thing is defense. So I already mentioned it before. Safeties are huge. In the beginning, when you can't depend on making the ball in the pocket, sometimes that's all you can do. All you can do is make it a little bit harder for your opponent. And that usually leads to power control as well. A lot of the safeties you'll do end up being really soft hits. There are some where you'll hit it hard and just, or you hit a ball that you know is going to leave you in a better spot than it will them. But a lot of the times it'll help you with the power. You're going to barely tap it and try and stick the cue ball in this little spot right behind your ball so they can't hit it, or they have to hit it off a rail to hit their ball, whatever it is. It's usually like a softer shot, but not always. With defense, you can also think about it when you're trying to make a shot. So for example, if my opponent only has one ball left on the table, but I have 3 balls left, if I shoot this ball and I miss, he'll have really good position on his last ball. But if I take the shot that's maybe a little bit harder, if I miss, the cue ball's on the opposite side of the table, or it leaves him in a really shitty position for his next ball. So you can also think about it that way. You can try and make a shot and just know, like, if you miss, it'll leave him a little bit harder. So that's another way you can kind of think about defense, where you're trying to make the shot, but even if you don't, you're good. You're hidden behind another ball or on the other side of the table, whatever it is. These are just a few of the major tips I've kind of picked up from playing. But in the beginning, I would say these are probably the most important things to learn to kind of help you get to the next step. Like I said, I've been playing for about a year now. So I've had a lot of time to kind of practice and kind of at least perfect my skills. But if I would have done a few things in the beginning, I would have advanced so much faster. Number one is drilling earlier. Do the drills. They suck. When you go to practice, you want to play 8 ball and shoot shots, which is great. You get the reps in. But the reality is you got to drill sometimes. So at least do the 30 minutes or maybe do an hour per week, knowing if you're going to practice a couple times per week, you do 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, whatever it is, trying to at least do an hour or so of drills every single week. The biggest, most important thing I wish I knew when I first started was finding a community. When I was playing in Arizona, we would go to random bars or, like I said, play at his apartment complex. But the majority of the time we went to his apartment complex. So it was just me, him, and one of our other friends playing constantly. We never got out and played in a real community. And even when we went to the bars, it was just kind of random people who would just show up and want to kind of shoot, or they were just drinking and they happened to see a pool table. But you want to find the community. When I moved from Arizona to Utah, I started playing at a bar out here, and I found out they do tournaments on Monday nights. So I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. And I mean, it clicked. The second I started doing those tournaments, I started to meet all these people. And I found out in Utah, there's a bunch of different pool leagues and there's a bunch of different tournaments. You could literally find a tournament every single night of the week. I started playing these tournaments. I was playing every Monday night. I would go and I started to meet more people and learn a lot more. You watch people who play that are way better than you and you see how they do it and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that. Like, I would have done it like this, but he did it the complete opposite way and it was a lot easier. For me, I overcomplicate things. So seeing people who are way better than me do it in a much simpler way was a huge eye opener. So then I started playing Sunday night tournaments with 9-ball and I started to kind of branch out and try other things. So there's a lot of different communities out there. You can find them online on Facebook. You can do Meetup. You can just go to your local bar and you'll kind of start to see what bars do tournaments, where to join leagues. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's nationwide. You can do APA, which is an amateur style league. It's you get a level. So basically you're a level 2. If you play a guy who's a level 7, I believe it's handicap. So for example, he'll have to make 70 balls where you'll only have to make 20 balls to win or something like that. They'll handicap it. But you can find a ton of leagues out here and kind of put you to the next level. I found out going through these tournaments is a lot of people have these really expensive cues. It's like with snowboarding or with any other sport, you'll find people who buy the most expensive shit. Think about it like this. I'm sure this is common sense, but it's not the tool you're using, it's the person who's using the tool. It's what you do with the tool. So if you go buy $1,000 cue and you've only been playing for a month, it's not going to make you 1,000 times better. It's not really going to do much at all except for feel a little bit different in the beginning until you adjust to it. Later on, when you get more advanced, you know exactly what you want to do and exactly what kind of cue you want and how you hit the ball. Sure, yeah, if you want to spend $1,000 on it, great. But in the first couple years, you don't need that. You're going to see a lot of people using this really expensive equipment and you don't need it. I got a cue from Goodwill for $6 to start out. And then I ended up finding a cue. This guy at a pool tournament I went to had an old cue and he was like, I'll sell it to you for 50 bucks. And I was like, deal, right there. And so now I have the Goodwill cue I use to break, and I have the other cue, which is a carbon cue that I use to play with. And that's all I need. You want to have a cue. You want to build that consistency. I understand that. You can look at Goodwill or local sporting stores or even online. You can find cues for under $100, and that's all you need. You want to be consistent. So just focus on getting something. Don't spend a ton of money. Just get something to kind of help you get there. You don't need that $1,000 cue. My goal with this is to win a tournament within the next 6 months. So like I said, I've already been kind of playing tournaments and practicing a lot. I've gotten 3rd place in a tournament, but I have not been able to get any higher than that. So I'm going to try and win one within the next 6 months. I'll leave some updates so you guys can kind of follow. Like I said, this whole series is about finding new skills and mastering them. So over the next year, I'm going to try a couple new skills and kind of see where I can go from there. So leave a comment down below. What's a skill you've always wanted to try but haven't mastered yet? With that being said, guys, like, subscribe. I will see you next time.